was a child born into an anthroposophically oriented family, anthroposophy being the spiritual science as outlined by the philosopher Rudolf Steiner, responsible for biodynamic agriculture and Waldorf schools, or Steiner schools. I was introduced to homeopathy for childhood medicine. This meant that when I got the flu or the mumps or whatever it was, I would be driven to Dr. Incao, who was an anthroposophical homeopathic doctor in upstate New York. And other than noting that Incao seemed like a pleasant enough fellow, I did not notice anything else. I would be asked to ingest what are essentially sugar and water tablets of various things a certain number of times a day. And my parents were obviously quite intent that I take this medicine. In my adult life, I consulted with a Marin County homeopathic doctor who was relatively highly recommended. I forget his name offhand. And he wanted to diagnose me, and it was a $400 investment for him to diagnose me, and then of course the sugar and water pills don't normally take more than $20, $30 at most. Although if I recall correctly, he wanted to have me inject things, to have the homeopathic ampules directly injected into my blood. Again, I did not notice anything, and I contacted him again. He re-diagnosed, and I didn't notice anything. In my channeled work with Lazarus, one of the bodies of material or cassettes that he produced on health and healing included a ranking of different medicinal systems. And he talked about energy medicine being up at the top of that pyramid of effectiveness, and that homeopathy was very near, like at maybe the 75% ranking point. And, this reaffirmed simply because I've found some of the Lazarus material to be quite helpful, that Lazarus ranked homeopathy that clearly. And what Lazarus explained was that the essence of healing is to communicate the dis-ease, the anomaly, the asymmetry, to the consciousness, and that the consciousness itself is responsible for healing the body. That the doctor's job is to communicate to the self what's off in the relationship between what might be considered the archetypal field of health around the body and the actual body, and that the gap between the field of health and the actual disease was created through the interference of the human ego. In other words, that if we imagine the ego, and this all is my own interpretation, that if we imagine the ego as somewhat of a black dome, in which a part of the ecological consciousness is placed within that dome, and an illusion of separation is created except for the slits of light that are carved in or blocked off, etc., by the ego, then very much like one might have the projection from a theater of a full image of high resolution onto the screen, but between the projector and the screen is a partition, is a lens called the human ego, and that the beliefs and choices and thoughts and memories and projections of the future and internalized beliefs of cult and other people are brought into that device, such that what comes onto the screen is the total picture, filtered by all of the different filterings of attitudes and beliefs, etc., but also what remained after large portions of it were deleted. And in that sense, for example, you can take a Van Gogh picture of the Mona Lisa, you can project it onto a screen, you can put a filter between the projector and the screen, and you can request that the filter only lets through dark colors, black colors. And so all of the light in the Mona Lisa is blocked, and you see a pattern of dark dots and shades and blurs on the picture that may or may not represent a woman's face. But if it does, it seems rather dark and sinister, because those dark points that Leonardo used to highlight the light remain, but what was being highlighted has been blocked out. And in this way, for example, a belief about a dismal world is an instruction to the lens to only let through that which is dark, and so you get a dark mottled version. Whereas someone else might have an opposite belief and say life is only wonderful and only the light would come through of the Mona Lisa, but there would be gaps where the contrasting darkness would be there. And that if there was no ego, there would be no illusion of separation, for one, but there also would not be a sense of a distortion, that what went on to the projector went on to the screen. In this case, the screen of human consciousness, that what hits human consciousness is actually the reality, a reality of which we are a part of. And so in that sense, what healing is to suspend the disbelief or the structure of the ego long enough to let a more complete picture of that template of health. And this may, as an offshoot, tie in with some of what Rupert Sheldrake has theorized, the Cambridge University professor in biology and metaphysics, etc., who has postulated that in many cases the self is outside of the body, and that the brain is simply capable of illuminating and being that screen to capture the fragments of the self that fit within the belief systems, etc., of the individual human. And in this case, what Lazarus said was that homeopathy was designed to contain within it a disease or a message of illness that the self could respond to and correct. And for any of you that understand homeopathy, it's basically sugar and water. But the process of homeopathy is one of, you take a substance at a very small, minute dose, and you percuss it in water at a certain rhythm. And you do that for a period of time. And what Lazarus says is that the molecules in the water take on the structure of that which is in it being percussed. That what is within the water as it is percussed shifts the molecular structure of the water to contain the message of that which is within the water. And then you take the object out of the water and you dilute the water and you percuss it again. And you do it again, as many as 30 times, diluting and percussing, diluting and percussing. And what Lazarus explained was that in the process, all traces of the actual poison or toxin or whatever have been eliminated through a process of dilution to where you cannot measure the toxin or the original substance in the water. One. But the molecular structure of the water remains. And this is then dehydrated and conveyed in sugar pellets. And when you eat it, the consciousness, the intention is that the consciousness gets the message, the coded message of what is the ailment, what's out of balance, through the structure of the molecules in the water. Well, that all makes sense. Is it possible that a substance changes the molecular structure of the water? Seems more than likely that there would be some change, and why not in the molecules? So then the only question becomes, the result, and as I say, relatively lukewarm results. However, homeopathic medicine is one of the best when it comes to averting risk, which is one of my focuses. Because if you're a skeptic and believe that it's just sugar and water, well, sugar and water doesn't hurt anyone. And if you are a believer in homeopathic medicine, sugar and water still doesn't hurt anyone. There are no cases of death around homeopathy, for example. There are no side effects of, dizziness and blah, 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 blah. And nor would anyone expect them from what is essentially dehydrated sugar and water. And so I would say that from that perspective, I was not afraid of homeopathic medicine, because what is to be afraid of? I'm inclined to be open to it. There's different anecdotal facts that suggest that it's something to be open to, meaning some people have experienced amazing and miraculous results. The royal family in England practices with homeopathic medicine. They're not idiots. Money's no object. If they thought that flying around the world to the Mayo Clinic would help them better, I'm sure they would. There's, the fact that a number of smart people have developed this approach, including Rudolf Steiner, for whether you agree with him or not, he's not an idiot. And so there's a predisposition with some disappointment around results. I had prolonged hay fever, and one of the things that irritated me was that I'd spent probably $2,000 on energy clearing sessions with a bioenergy balancer practitioner, and they were all around releasing emotional charges and stuff around reactivity, around pollen and different foods. And I noticed that there's some results, but the analyzer in me is saying, okay, you've got $2,000 and you haven't cleared hay fever from energy medicine. You've done endless Lazarus meditations on a variety of fields. There is not a clearing of hay fever. And I'm a landscaper, and I'm sick and tired of blowing my nose and sneezing so much. But I'm a little bit concerned, and this is somewhat of an inherited concern. I think that regardless of the cult in which you are raised, that within that cult there is a cult bias. And so within the cult of anthroposophy, you buy into the treatments that are going to work. And so you take your child to an anthroposophical doctor, and if they don't clear up, it's better luck next time. It's not screw anthroposophy or screw, homeopathic medicine. And then when it works, it's, that's because of anthroposophical or homeopathic medicine. And the same is true with Western medicine. They give you the antidepressant. If it works, it's because the miracles of drugs in Western medicine. If someone commits suicide, it's like, well, that can happen sometimes. But just try another allopathic medicine, and hopefully your next child won't commit suicide. We'll try a different one, and so you have a similar confirmation bias. Everything that works you remember and focus on, and everything that doesn't is just pushed off to the side. And so and similarly, most people that are strongly into alternative medicine, as it is referred, meaning it's not the majority medicine, are rather skeptical and scandalized by all of the horror stories in traditional medicine. One week they want you to drink red wine. The next week all alcohol is toxic. They want you to eat margarine. Then margarine isn't as good as butter. Then you should have skimmed milk, then whole milk, and there's this endless going back and forth, and there's plenty of scandal, and then all the the fact that doctors take bribes to recommend drugs, and the escalation of drug consumption, the amount of mental emotional disease in the culture. So then there's all of this to say, stay away from Western medicine, except for important surgeries. I don't think most people would anticipate that. Even Mrs. Eddy, the spiritual science. I don't think she would advocate that a broken arm is going to heal itself, just by ignoring it. So there's this sense of the crude manipulation of bones and stitches, etc., or putting a Band-Aid on, when blood. Yes, use antiseptics and use Western medicine for that, but not for drugs, and as little as possible. And so I've steered away from allergen drugs that suppress the symptoms and cause drowsiness and various things like that, because I just don't know how many of the long-term impacts are studied, because most drug studies they're very narrow in scope, and so one might successfully come out of a drug study concluding that red wine benefits the heart in moderate doses, for example. But that study is not correlated with other studies about brain damage, or other studies about allergens or things like that. They're kept in these compartmentalized boxes in such a way that one can do something that benefits one's heart but damages one's driving safety or whatever it is. And it's these complexities that we're so weak at analyzing as a culture, because of course every individual overwhelmed by all this data just wants to know the best thing to do overall. I mean, with all the different complexities, just tell me what to do, because it's very difficult to try and gather that information together. And so one day I decided to buy every allergy homeopathic medicine available on Amazon, and buy everyone available at my one health food store, and buy everyone available on the other health food store. And the rationale is that all totals up to around $120. So I've now got a lining up of sugar and water pills, all saying they nasal sprays, itchy eyes, coughs, pollen allergies, tree allergies. they all have their different names. It's like surely one of them, if this homeopathy is going to work, is going to do the trick. So I'm going to just take all of them. So I did. And this is against homeopathic guideline. But I felt impatient. This $400 doctor recommending one without impact, then another without impact. I didn't want to go through 6 months of that. So I just took all of them. And sure enough, my hay fever cleared up almost immediately. And I thought, this is great. For $120, not leaving my house, eating sugar pellets, my hay fever has cleared up wonderfully. That's an intelligent response. One loses confidence to some degree in energy healing that just goes on and on. When it's so expensive, you take time off work, you make an appointment, you revolve your life around the appointment, you go to the appointment, you talk about the feelings and issues involved, you come out, you drive back to work, and that happens dozens of times, and I just want to stop sneezing. And so, in that sense, $2,000, $120, there is definitely, takes 2 minutes, etc. It works. And so then, not knowing really which one was which, I would just throw, homeopathic allergy pills down, whenever I would remember, and it worked. And this was a great breakthrough. And so that's my experience. And I've also tried the Bach flower remedies, rescue remedy being one for trauma, for example, though I didn't understand the word trauma at the time. It just seemed like, I'm feeling anxious and scared and terrified. Okay, let's take some rescue remedy. And I'm not entirely sure if it works or not, meaning I don't suddenly feel less scared or something like that. But then there's the research on the placebo effect. And what's very interesting is that the placebo effect is estimated by some researchers to be the cause of 40% of people's improvement. And, I've studied a whole host of different anecdotes around, for example, placebo effect in hypnosis, where hypnosis can be used to anesthetize someone to a point that you can amputate their leg without anesthetic. And that's a pretty stunning placebo effect. And so if you can cut off someone's entire leg, if they've been hypnotized properly, without a single anesthetic, that's phenomenal. There were also hypnosis and even just suggested things that were kind of quasi-hypnosis around belief, where a knee surgeon, as an experiment in the placebo effect, took patients who had been diagnosed accurately as needing knee surgery. And he gave half of the people the knee surgery as prescribed by allopathic medicine, the surgery. And the other, he just did an incision in the knee in the general area, but didn't do the surgery, and told them they were all better and well. And they all experience equal results. And so you have this profound sense of the placebo effect. And then Seth, another channel entity, has talked about that it all stems from belief. That if you believe in Western medicine, as those going to the white-coated doctor and having a little incision but no surgery did, that you would get better. If you didn't believe in it, you would get worse. And so if you believe in it, do it. If you don't believe in it, don't do it. Which brings me then to the point of I just took a substance in the similar theory around emotional trauma and physiological trauma. So I just ingested a homeopathic remedy, again on Amazon, that action suggests or is always done on the foundation of belief. So in other words, when I decided to take a homeopathic remedy on trauma, it is with the belief that it might help. That belief that it might help is medicinal. The spending of money and time to complete the purchase and ingest it is simultaneously done with the belief that it may help and the belief that it will not harm, which in the literature, the placebo effect is bringing in enormous benefit regardless of the remedy. Now, I tend to think that it should ultimately be reduced to the intelligence equation. Is this the least amount of energy that I can spend to create the most well-being? And so it's more intelligent than spending $2,000 and driving back and forth to my energy healer to spend $120 a few minutes at a time putting sugar pills in. And it's more intelligent to order a trauma ampule of homeopathic energy and medicine than it is not to. And the belief is reinforced by the behavior. The very fact that your parents are anxious to get you to the doctor because they believe the doctor will help, and they're relieved, and like, how are you feeling? We expect you to feel better, has a definite placebo component. And so where I stand in any of this is that it's good to have an open enough mind to try approaches that can work for some or all people, to find those that work. And when you find those that work, if you've got one way that works that costs thousands of dollars and lots of hassle, and another way that works that costs hundreds of dollars and no hassle, it's more intelligent to choose the latter. And it's intelligent to stay in tune with who we are and what's going on. And so to that extent, anything that isn't clearing up easily in some other easy way, I'm more than happy to purchase a homeopathic remedy. And what I see in play in terms of the beliefs is most of the time, at least some of the people involved in the creation and manufacture of a remedy believe in it. And so their belief is woven in to the manufacturing. The purchase and the ingestion is similarly based on a belief that it works, and a belief that there will be no side effects. And so that belief is strengthened every time I take the time and money to ingest a homeopathic something. And so my way of relating to beliefs is somewhat flexible, with a focus on, what works. And in this case, I'm happy for homeopathy to work on a placebo effect. I'm happy for it to work with a placebo effect plus a homeopathic effect. I'm happy for it to work with a homeopathic effect and no placebo effect. I'm happy for it to work. And I prefer it to something that, has a long list of side effects that scare me, with a fear and anxiety and an anticipation of, am I going to experience anal leaking, or what's that? And, and that doesn't seem conducive to healing, to be in that state of wondering what's going to happen here, and is it damaging my body long term, etc. Because obviously I have some belief that toxins can kill me, that toxins can hurt me, strengthened by my parents, strengthened by the more holistic health view of various drug compounds. And so that's my learning period with homeopathy. It's at a point where if there is a remedy available, and if something is chronic in any way, I will order the remedy if I remember and take it and notice the effects just like I would try any other thing.